Hi, I'm Sequoiah with Project Tree Collard, and today's video is about reasons to prune your tree collards. Tree collards have a reputation for being really low care and easy to have. They're perennial, they just give and give and give year round, and let's keep that reputation that way. You don't need to prune your tree collards unless you have a reason to. So this video today goes through some of what those reasons are for pruning your tree collards. Otherwise, you can just harvest and eat them and enjoy them, and you don't need to cut them at all.
Probably the most common reason to cut tree collards is because they're too tall or they're leggy. And by cutting the tips back, you not only shorten them, but you make all of the hormones in the plant want to be more bushy. So the same technique applies if you're just wanting them less tall or if you're wanting to make them more dense and bushy and less leggy. Another reason you may want to cut your tree collards is to propagate them from cuttings. So you'll just want to find a nice healthy cutting that's at least as thick as a pencil and not thicker than 1 inch in diameter. And you'll want to take your cutting from that nice healthy growth like this one right here. Tree collards almost always get too wide. They can grow out in a path or hit a building or just make another plant overcrowded or even take over another plant. So it's important to cut them back. An important reason to cut back your tree collards is because you want to follow up on previous pruning you did. Here with these big blues, I cut them back pretty hard after they bloomed. But I only cut them where I knew that they were going to, make leaf buds at the nodes. But I did want to cut them a little bit more. So I'm going to go through the whole plant and do what I'm doing right here, cutting off a couple more nodes at the top. With this purple tree collard example, it's quite different. It was growing way out into the path, but I couldn't cut it back as much as I wanted to because there was a lot of woody growth and I wasn't sure where it would sprout out. So I did my first round of cutting, and that's the first stem. This is the second stem, and that sprouted out nicely, and the third stem sprouted out nicely. So one option, which would be a little more conservative, is I could cut the top bit off of each of these 3 stalks, as I'm doing right here in the demonstration. But there's another bunch of options. One is I could follow this first shoot down to its origin, which is right there, and remove that further from the path. Or I could even follow this second one back to its origin and cut that one off right there.
And now it's midpoint in the video. That means you hit like if you're still watching this because you're learning about pruning tree collards and you want to encourage me to make more content by hitting the subscribe button, because that way I can kind of go up a little bit in the algorithm. It's not really that tree collards are that popular of a topic, so it really helps me out if you leave comments, questions, and suggestions for future content on the channel. Thanks so much, and back to our content about pruning tree collards.
You will want to remove any damaged tissues. This could be a break or tip dieback like here, could be caused by a slug or a storm or some insects or just something happening to your tree collard that you don't even know what happened. But it's good to remove any damaged tissue and try to leave the healthiest tissue so that your plant can put out new healthy growth in that place. Most tree collards will bloom at some point or another, maybe not every year, but at some point in time they will bloom, and you need to cut off the flower stalks at some point, either when they're in full bloom like this or after they've bloomed a bit longer, or maybe you're going to save the seed and let them full on form seed capsules. But at some point, you're going to need to cut that off. So you just basically remove it and then you do follow-up pruning later. Another reason to prune tree collards is to prepare them for winter. It's very late August, early September. And look there, this is the perfect example for this because I think a wind blew that down or maybe a cat chased through the garden. And if we trace back that branch, it ripped back there. You can see the core of the tree collard, and rot could be introduced through that damage. So I'm going to have to keep my eye on that after I prune that off and hope that it doesn't rot that whole section of the tree collard plant. But this is what we're trying to prevent by pruning our tree collards for winter. This Michigan tree collard is about 2 years old, I think, and it's about 2 inches in diameter, so it's a substantial plant now. And that was probably up in the air there, and there's another straggler there. So when you imagine snow, high winds, and the weight of a heavy rain on these plants, you can imagine how these sections should be cut back in preparation for that. What we want is nice upright growth, like in the center of the plant. You can see right here, that's the type of growth that does well in the wind and rain and snow. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned about different reasons to cut. Otherwise, you can just leave them as they are and enjoy eating your tree collards.